Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming out tonight and welcome to Zibby's Bookshop. So we're here to celebrate Susan Goldman Rubin and Cari Beauchamp, and we're going to be discussing the women who built Hollywood. So welcome to the two of you. So it's going to be about a 30-minute chat between the two of them, followed by audience Q&A if you have any questions, and a book signing. So whenever you both are ready.
Thank you, Sophie. Appreciate it. Well, what the hell? Let's start at the beginning. What inspired you to write this in the first place?
Well, I'll tell you what inspired me, but part of what inspired me is your book. I brought my copy for her to sign. You can see she posted. And in fact, when Cari walked in, one of the staff members said, "Do you know Cari? How long have you known each other?" I said, "I've never met her."
But we've talked on the phone quite a bit.
Right. Yeah. So I began this book during the pandemic. And I had always wanted to do, I'm 5 feet tall. And you all know that, so I can't hide it. Even if I wear wedgies. And I always thought of writing a book about the silent film stars who were my size, curly hair. And it was going to be called Girls with Curls, Stars of the Silver Screen. I thought it was a terrific idea. And during the pandemic, when many of my excellent writer friends who are here were doing worthwhile things like gardening and cleaning out a lipstick drawer, I thought I'll do anything rather than clean up, and my husband will attest to that. So I pitched the idea to my editor by phone. And I thought, she'll never like this. And she said, "I love it." And she said, "I love Hollywood." I said, "You do?" And she said, "What about making an anthology and looking at women in other branches of the Hollywood filmmaking business?" So I said, "Great," because I knew that would be a lot of research and that maybe the pandemic would end, but I really was still researching. So that's really got me started. And I was very excited to think that women were so important at the beginning of the business. Cari
All the way through, really, but a little bit of a roller coaster here.
Yeah. So anyway, that's how I got started. And by the way, I love movies. I really do. And I grew up in New York in the Bronx, and our local movie theater had double features. And I didn't know that you ever go into a movie at the beginning of the movie because we just went in when dinner was over.
This is where we came in. We can go.
That's right. And my dad would say, "Just remember when we came in," which is helpful as a storyteller.
Well, until Hitchcock wouldn't let you in.
I was married.
Yeah.
That's a different story altogether.
That changed
Everything.
But
anyway, I've always loved movies. And in addition to wanting to be an artist, which I knew I wanted to be, I thought I also wanted to be an actress. It didn't matter that I had flat feet, I was overweight, but I thought, no, I know it can be done. I had a lot of moxie.
no, you got it.
So anyway, that's what got me started. I love movies, and of course still do. And to feel like you're on the inside looking at how movies are made, that was really incredible.
Well, I think one of the things, and it's reflected in the 12 women you chose to write about, is that one of my attractions to filmmaking is that it's one of the most collaborative. You got to bring your best game to the table. And so does the costume designer, and so does the editor, and so does the set decorator. And then together you elevate. That's the goal anyway, And that's reflected, I think, in there, in your book. And, you write about the costume designers and the editors, and my real favorite, the stunt women.
I love that was the easiest chapter to write. Not that I'm much for stunts myself.
But everybody's called on.
These women in high heels.
Yeah.
Helen Holmes, who I wrote about. Incredible. That was fun. I want to mention something about costumes that, the research doesn't stop even when the book is out.
Yeah.
But we were recently on a plane going to France, and a film came on, a documentary about Ferragamo.
Oh, yeah.
And
Mary Pickford's in that, and Gloria Swanson.
Of course, I should have asked you in the first place. But he designed shoes for one of the movies I wrote about from the point of view of the costume designer. And sure enough, the historian held up the exact shoe that I pictured in the book.
Wow.
But that's thrilling. So I woke my husband up, but he didn't appreciate
Well, excuse me, one of my issues with the current or the new Academy Museum is that, it's the museum of movies as they wish it had been. Not that it was. It's not, no real history there, very little real history. And then, of course, but I have to, tip my hat to you for including 3 Black actresses. And frankly, I'm not gonna say the only 3 Black actresses, but pretty damn close,
And that was so important to me. I just did a book on Paul Robeson, and I wrote about Freddie Washington, who appeared with Robeson in the film.
Right.
So I felt I already knew her.
Right.
But I was amazed to discover Louise Beavers. I'd never heard that name.
Really?
And she
Okay.
did more than 200 films.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Well, you
just-
could make, 5 in a month when you only got,
Right.
4 days of work.
And recently, the Academy did show of all the movies, you have to choose which images are going to be in the book. And I do my own photo research. There was a movie she did called Reform School. And the boys look so jolly, that she looks, I said, better than some of the principals I had at school. Very warm and friendly. And in fact, the Academy just had a showing of that movie. They remastered it.
Uh-huh.
And it was a breakthrough movie because of the way she really worked with the kids. So in terms of the
Yeah,
script.
no, it's just so much, so many of the roles, and I mean, it's not, of course, they weren't really 3, I mean, they're good half dozen, I think, but you show these movies, or, I mean, I introduced the women, a couple of months ago, and as I'm watching it again on the big screen, I realize I'm wincing from some of the way the script is read. Or, one of my favorites is Palm Beach Story. And the Black bartender is billed as Snowflake. Oh my God, these poor people. So even though you're talking about 3 women who were at the peak of their career at the time, of any of them, they still, what they went through on a personal level as well as professional. I mean, I would, Hattie McDaniel always said, I'd rather play a maid than be a maid, right? And God love her for it, but it's just rough. Now, tell us a little about the 2 Asian actresses
That
we
was
talk about.
so important too. One of them was the first Chinese American filmmaker in this country.
Yeah.
And she was 3rd generation American. This was just amazing to me. Like one of my sons is a theater publicist. So I called him and I said, oh my God, I've got to write about Marion Wong.
Right.
She had her studio and made the first, he said, Mom, everybody knows her. I said, no.
Oh, I'm so tired of hearing that.
Everybody doesn't know her. And
Sure
just fragments of the film were left.
Yeah.
And I had the chance to talk to her great nephew. She made this incredible film about, the theme was so good, about a young couple trying to get settled as a modern couple, like 100 years ago, and yet kind of respecting tradition and having to go through a whole ensemble of a fake wedding just to please the parents and all that stuff. And it was a
universal story.
Right, it was a universal story. It didn't go with distributors. And she thought it was a failure. She lost face and family money.
Sure.
And it was her great nephew, who was a director of Asian studies at Berkeley. She said, oh, here, do something with this old film. I thought this was the most amazing story. Again, about preserving and now, of course, it's considered a treasure. It's a treasure. And I also wanted to write about Anna May Wong.
Yeah.
And just our luck that the U.S. Mint issued a quarter with her face just before the book went to press.
Right.
So I said to my editor, oh, golly, we have a conference.
Yeah.
You invite me? let's just give out a lot of quarters.
Aw.
And she said, I don't think we're gonna do that. There goes your royalty.
Good try, good try. I like it, I like it. Yeah, no, she was, she was pretty amazing. Thalberg, I don't think ever promised her the good earth, but I know that the man who was hired as the original director of the Good Earth went to China and auditioned a bunch of people, thought he was only going to hire Chinese people, came home with tons of stuff, and was told by Thalberg, nope, we're going a different way. And Louise Rayner, and he went home that night and committed suicide.
No.
Yeah, George Hill.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He came into the meeting drunk and then left and went to his house on the beach on Venice Boulevard and killed himself.
Oh, that's horrible. I didn't know
Yeah.
this.
No.
Well, thank you for coming, but I'm
It's
so
just
glad.
kind of
But that's a private
what-
conversation.
that to me is one of the real heartbreaks.
Oh, and Pearl Buck wanted an
Oh,
authentic
yeah, no,
Chinese-American.
absolutely. No, and
That's
it's,
stunning.
please, we see, the whole stereotype, the segregation and stereotypes and the ripple effects of the way it hit everybody. But, anyway, now I wanted to ask you about one other of my favorites in here, who's Margaret Booth, the film editor.
Oh, yeah.
Now, film editing, if you don't have a good editor, you don't have a good movie. And Margaret was the one who sat next to Thalberg, not the other studio people, not a lot. No, it was Margaret that he told, this is what we got to do.
And he kept saying to her, give me the woman's point of view, give me your point of view. And really, but when she went to work for him, this is also amazed me.
Yeah.
She was just a teenager. In fact, I wrote also about Lillian Gish.
Right.
And I have a wonderful photo of Lillian and her sister Dorothy doing their very first movie in 1912. And they're supposed to be scared and they're being kidnapped, and a gun is literally coming through the wall. And I thought, oh, this is a terrific picture. It turned out that the guy holding the gun was Margaret Booth's brother, who was working for Griffith, and he died in a car accident.
Oh my
And Griffith came to the gravesite to do the eulogy, and he offered Margaret a job when she graduated high school, just so to help pay bills. These stories are incredible.
See, I didn't know that one. See what I mean? The joy of,
And so then she went to work. I had no idea how this is really done.
Yeah.
She literally would hold up a strip of celluloid and cut it with scissors and paste it, scotch tape it. I don't know if they had scotch tape then, but
they had glue. They used glue.
And then
And a
put it
little
together.
brush. A little brush and glue.
So she learned it from the bottom up, literally.
Yeah.
And so she thought that she and her mother would go to movies, and she thought that's exactly how it came out of the camera. And so she was just as naive as the rest of us,
Right.
not knowing how it was done. So I think that story is amazing, and she worked for years and years and years.
She's got an oral history at the Academy. That's pretty. She
I
worked
said
for she worked for like 60 years in the business. Pretty amazing. Now the
By
last.
the way, Cari was the scholar at the Academy, and this is during the pandemic. And I couldn't go over to the Academy library, which is on Olympic, near where my mother used to live, because it was closed. All the libraries were closed. And I did send for that oral history that she had an interview where she told very matter-of-factly.
Yeah.
And they said, well, what about your private life? She said, oh, I guess I don't have one. Who needs one?
Well, Culver City wasn't much in those days. Let me tell you. They did not have much of a social life, and if you worked in Culver City. But thinking of her as an editor, the last one I want to bring up is the director, Dorothy Arzner.
Oh, yeah.
Not one of my favorites.
But this was amazing. And again, kind of a familial thing, because my son's husband, my son-in-law, had been a librarian at UCLA just when the biographer of that book, Dorothy Arzner, was researching.
Okay.
So I said, I want to find just the right director, and he had told me about Dorothy Arzner. I started looking into Dorothy.
Well, you had a choice of three. You had Lois Weber, Dorothy Arzner, Alice, let's start with Alice,
Okay.
sorry, and then Ida Lupino. But that did.
Ida Lupino was too
Too
late,
late.
maybe for the next book, because one of these
She's
signings,
too
somebody
late.
said, are you gonna do another book?
Yeah.
You know, there's other
Well,
early
yeah,
signings.
the 50s
Okay.
get a little dull. Yeah, okay, go on.
But Dorothy Arzner struck me particularly because she wound up teaching at UCLA, and one of her students was Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah.
And he was gonna drop out of school because he just couldn't afford to stay in, and she would bring cookies to class. And he was so enamored of her passion for movies and what she knew.
Yeah.
And he just finally said, Miss Arzner, I think I have to drop out. I've been offered a job as a stage manager, and she said, I think you have something. It was a spotted talent. And she encouraged him to stay, and he literally said, that crumb of encouragement. I watched the film over and over.
Right.
That crumb, I said, what a great pun. The crumb of encouragement. It was just enough to make him stay in.
Well, he came to Paramount, where a couple of years ago they dedicated a building to her,
Oh, wow.
and he never, ever goes to things like that. Thank you very much. And he came to dedicate the building to Dorothy Arzner. He still felt so that he would not have been there if it wasn't for her.
And he said in this documentary, which I watched again, that he passed on exact lessons she taught to his daughter Sophie.
Sitting at the
and sitting right next to the cameraman, so you can see the reaction of. He said the actors really are doing this for you, and you've got to just have that eye contact. So all those lessons.
She was such a brilliant woman, and my friend Kevin Brownlow, who interviewed her
He's your
greatly.
friend?
Oh, yeah, one of the best. 25 years at least. Anyway, I talk about somebody. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Kevin. But he interviewed her several times and begged her to do her memoirs. And she said, oh, there's so many. I've got all the papers in the garage, but there's so many more interesting things to talk about. Now this is true of Lois Weber too. Other women, I just find I have such a mixed feeling about it because, I'm here to tell you, Cecil B. DeMille never threw away a piece of paper that had his name on it. Okay? And these women just put stuff in the garage or whatever and just said, I wouldn't have had the stuff on Frances Marion I had if her secretary hadn't gone into the dumpster when she moved.
Wow.
And Frances, oh, no, no. And Martha just took it out. Thank you, Martha. Anyway, it's just amazing the way I get it, the way women find much more interesting things elsewhere than themselves. But at the same time, damn it, they're hell on historians. They're just not fair. Anyway, let me close this section by asking you what, this is written for young people. What do you want young people to take away from this book?
Which is an excellent question. I really thought about that.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things I hope they'll watch some of the movies, because the movies are terrific.
Yeah.
So that's definitely one thing.
Uh-huh.
And so many of these films are accessible. Kids are on their phones, and internet and all that stuff more easily than I can do. So that's one thing. But I think the very idea that women can do anything and that women can help women, and obviously I'm not a diehard feminist, but I am in a way, because I really believe it.
Yeah.
We were raised in a certain way, and I love being a mother and having a family, but on the other hand, you can do it. You can do it. And learning, I just admire the way these women said, I'm going to learn. Like Dorothy Arzner said, I'm going to start from the bottom. And she typed scripts just to get the hang of it. She talked to William DeMille, and he said...
She couldn't type. When she started, she couldn't touch it.
I knew you'd tell me something I didn't. You told me a lot.
No,
We have to do a sequel.
but she had a couple of women there in the room with her who looked over, felt sorry for her. I love this part, and took half of the stuff and then put DA, her initials, at the bottom of the thing. Got her through a couple of weeks. She'd go home. She taught herself to type. But it was women at every turn who helped her.
The way you talked about Frances Marion, that was so moving. How Frances said, I owe my greatest success to women. I'm sure that's your quote.
Well,
Yeah.
When I come away from all this, I have to say, even though it's about film and it's about other things, the one big dividing thing I see between these women, both behind and in front of the camera, that makes the difference for them is their community of women friends. If they have a community of women friends, boy, they can get through a lot. If they don't, if they feel alone or isolated or, like God love her, Mary Pickford, just didn't have enough women friends. She just didn't count on them, didn't turn to them.
But on the other hand, she established the film school at USC.
Oh, no, she did a ton of incredible things.
Yeah.
Incredible things. But I'm talking about later on in her life, she just never had close women friends. And I just think that's what I see as a pattern over. Doesn't matter that they're in film, but it does sort of, because they're very public conscious,
And I think it's encouraging for young people always to say, look at these obstacles, like Anna May Wong.
Yes.
Her father said, I don't know of any Chinese film star. There are no role models. And she became the role model.
Yeah.
And I quoted another actress who came later who said, Anna May Wong, you were my role model. So I think that's so important for young people that there are obstacles. Oh, I must mention the forward to the book. Ruth Carter, who's a friend of my friend Edward, agreed to write the forward to the
which
book.
is lovely.
And she said, their courage to dream gave me courage and inspiration to dream.
And knowing that they dreamt.
Right.
Knowing you're not the only person to think of something or to try something is so liberating.
Yes.
To know that others came before. And again, I think, most of those women are exactly, that kind of example.
So I thank you for writing your book and being so generous in helping me over the phone during the pandemic. Because now I know who you are.
Yeah.
Where you live. I can come on over.
But I appreciate you, spreading the good word about these women. I mean, the number of times I've heard, nobody knows about these women. Well, thank you so much for erasing 25 years of my work. And while we're discussing that, excuse me, but to say nobody knows, everybody doesn't know, but some people do. And the more that do, get more and more strength from it, I believe. And so thank you for, joining me in, spreading the good news about these incredible women.
Really a work of love.
Yeah,
Really a work of love.
it's a joy. So questions, you want to open it up a little? Anybody? I promise I'll be better. Bennett?
Yeah, hi, I just wondered, it sounds, because I've been amazed, because you hear so many silent films are lost, the vast majority of them. But did you find they're more available than people realize of some of these classic movies? Maybe both of you in your research.
Do you mind if I answer?
No.
It's, yes, there are more. There were some in Alaska. What happened was that a lot of these films got, first you do the big cities, then you do the hinterlands, then you do the foreign countries. Well, by the time it got to Australia, they didn't think it was worth the postage to send it back. Seriously, same with Alaska, actually, and some places in the Caribbean. So they either, just deteriorated, thank you, the weather, or they did get found later and got sent back. Some we have, because in Alaska, they were found buried under the ice. I mean, some pretty amazing. Really? That ended up being a good way to protect it. Now, like Mary Pickford's, I'd say 85% of hers survived easily. Couple of Lillian Gish, God love her, did a all female, including the only person she couldn't find was a female cinematographer. Dorothy Parker wrote the title cards. Can you imagine?
Oh.
Anyway, now that's lost. That's on the top of my list to find that picture. But the other ones, they were turning out. Films were what? Ideal 1 week in front of the cameras, the next in theaters in a month. There were a hell of a lot of silent films. And I don't want to speak blasphemy, but not all of them are worth saving, But it's about 70% is the agreed upon number of how many are lost.
Or lost.
The silent ones.
That's what I was afraid of.
The silent ones, yeah.
Yeah.
But they, and they find some that where a reel or two is missing, but they have a lot of photographs, they put them back in.
Oh, like the Marion one.
Oh,
Like, that's a classic example, like her
Yeah.
nephew found it, restored it, and brought it to the attention of the public, and it's shown at festivals. And I included,
But with a few photos in between to
Right.
explain
but
it.
in
Yeah.
the back matter, I was surprised to find how many festivals there are throughout the world
Yeah.
of silent films. And
More and more. I mean, it's being, yeah. And it looks like, our friends at Turner Classic Movies might have survived some of this. Who knows? We're hoping. And yeah, so we'll see what happens there. But I was surprised again at the most recent Turner Classic Movies Film Festival, how many of the people there were under 35. It was so exciting. Oh, it just, and they were so into it. So the films and the actors and the crew, they really know their stuff. My favorite thing was that one person, they asked does anybody in the audience know how many times Myrna and William Powell made a film together? The entire audience burst out, 14. So I mean, these people know their stuff. I just was like, okay, unbelievable. And I wouldn't have counted it. Anyway, so,
yes, Sonia.
Yeah, I was wondering, of all the research that you did, and I'm sure it ended up in the book, what your favorite, like your 2 or 3 favorite things that you discovered when you
yeah,
were
that's a
working?
good question.
For me,
Yeah, that's
what I
exactly.
discovered, the 2 or 3 favorite things. I loved knowing about Helen Holmes, who not only wrote her own screenplays to have thrilling action, but that when she was accused of being in a film where she's supposed to be the telegraph operator at a railroad station, trains were her thing. She grew up with her dad, who was an engineer. They said that it doesn't look convincingly real enough. She learned how to work the telegraph. And when she did those amazing stunts where she rescued men, she wore high heels. I love that part almost better. So that was amazing right there. But, oh geez, there were so
And she
many.
was still in the teens. I mean,
Oh,
this is
yes.
like the late teens.
Oh,
So,
right, right. And I was also interested to find out that she loved driving cars and it tied in with the suffrage movement because women still didn't have the vote. She wanted to race cars. So she appeared in Keystone movies and had to wear disguises. And she went to rallies driving cars to emphasize that women could do anything. So, it dovetails with other, because, I did a book on voting rights. It dovetails with other, but there are so many facts. My heavens, so many. Another thing that really surprised me was that Anna Mae Wong grew up right here in Los Angeles, in Chinatown. And she was a 2nd or 3rd generation, I have to check my facts. But that her father had come over during the gold rush had left her wife back home, then come over and remarried, and that was the traditional way of doing things then. So to really read her story as much as I could find, of her own words, it took all the glamour, it took a lot of the glamour out of it. Just have, and she worked in her father's laundry. And it was really tough going. So there was so much, but just what Cari has told me tonight, I scurry home and start doing another angle. That's the whole beauty of researching the subject we really love so much. You know, finding out
It's true, yeah.
these details.
And the extended family we get from doing the research. I just, I'm happy as a clam. The only other thing this didn't have to do with women, but it has to do with the pace of change. In 1920, there were over 100 filmmaking companies listed in the Los Angeles directory. And in 1933, there were 7.
Oh my.
So between bankruptcies and mergers and the Depression and of course the building of these big, MGMs and Paramounts, that's what happened. So, and the whole way, and of course 33 is talkies, 1920 is silence, a whole different budgets, everything. But, wow, 13 years, zip, 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 a lot of change. Yeah, I did that with a book too about, it's called My First Time in Hollywood. And it's 40 people, 20 men, 20 women. Their stories, it's like oral history, a little bit, of their coming to Hollywood and what they wanted to do. Like Harold Lloyd is an overnight hotel manager and, all these things. Anyway, and I thought I was going to do it through 1960, right? Oh, hell, I had to stop in 30 with the silent era, and now I've collected all this stuff for a second one. I talked to it, so anyway, and, I'm sorry, any other points?
Myrna Lloyd. Is it Myrna Lloyd? Remember you mentioned Myrna Lloyd? You have a little bio about her?
I'm sorry, Myrna Lloyd, who what?
The actress.
Yeah.
Myrna Lloyd.
Yeah.
Do you know much about her life?
Well, yeah, she came from Montana when she was 14, shortly after her father died with her mother. They lived very near Gary Cooper, actually, in Montana, although he wasn't Gary then. I think he was Frank. There was another Frank Cooper acting then, so he changed his name. But they stayed friends the whole time. Anyway, she came out. They lived in Culver City. That's where, and she went to school. She tried to do ballet. She went to Venice High School, and that there's a sculpture of a gorgeous young woman in front of Venice High School that is indeed Myrna Lloyd. Once oh my God, her work in movies for a couple of years, and was doing the pre-movie program, dancing and at the Egyptian Theater and at the Chinese, but mostly the Egyptian. She was, she worked for Sid Grauman and for a couple of years and was and then in her movies it was the same way, very exotic. See, it was that same time before Anna May Wong, she had her, the eyes all painted up or down or all. Anyway, finally, it really wasn't till the Thin Man in the beginning in 1933 that took off as Myrna as the idea, with the great wife and smart cookie that she became. And of course, stayed that way forever, the rest of her career. Fabulous career. She never got tired of it.
I didn't know
Yeah. So right over there in Culver City.
that.
There she was.
Wow.
I don't know. Don't ask me my own children's birthdays. But for some reason, that's all I can say. I know Myrna's, but I don't know my own children. Anyway, so,
I think Myrna had a policy of Palisades later.
Oh, sure, no, absolutely. I was saying. She married a couple of producers and she was married a lot. She said that she was never not married at the right time to get married to William Powell. And you know, I had an experience when I think it was like 94 at the Democratic National Convention in New York. And, talk about knowing somebody type of thing. And I'm at this, big event in Hilton. And I hear this voice that wait a minute, that's my friend. Where's my friend? I know the voice. I don't know who it is, but I know the voice. And I kept looking around. And I'm like, who is that? But I know it's my friend because I recognize the voice. It was Myrna Loy. She always was an incredible Democrat. She was one of the first in California to run for fair housing laws. She walked and did incredible stuff for fair housing laws in California, and then worked with the United Nations a lot. And so it was a natural thing for her to be at the convention. But I hadn't seen her. And I hadn't seen my friend Myrna for a good 30 years, right? So I didn't recognize her. But the voice was still the same. And finally, I was like, oh, she's my good friend I've never met. Of course. How silly of me, right?
Susan, how long do you do all these books? How long did you research this book? And for your average bio that you do, how long do you spend researching, and when do you know you're done?
Well, as you can tell, I'm not really ever done. But then you go to contract and you kind of estimate because you want the book to come out. But this was during the pandemic, which in a way worked out because we couldn't go anyplace. We didn't travel. It was a good time for me to be at home working every day, which I like to do.
I also want to really congratulate you because when I read through it the second time, as you know, I know a lot of these people. But I really was impressed with the way you reduced the stories without taking away from the stories. The crux was still there on every turn. So
That's the best review ever.
yeah. I was really impressed.
No, but
And a little jealous. I don't mind telling you that.
But I have a good editor who's very tough. But you sign a contract and say it's going to be done, and the final will be done. And then comes the photo research, and finally, but a good couple of years at least.
Couple of years?
Oh, at least. Yeah. I was looking when I pitched it. I think just after in May, just after the pandemic. Just after the pandemic started, which started March before lockdown.
Yeah.
And we established a pub day. And I'd have to go back, but it takes a good couple of years. But remember, I couldn't go anyplace. I couldn't meet Cari.
No, or could you really go in and out of the library easily? So it's
At
a
all.
mixed blessing.
At all, in a way, but the stories came out, to track down Arthur Don, both Chinese, Hollywood Chinese, and then to get hold of Marion Wong's great nephew.
Yeah.
Who was going to Hawaii. You make these arrangements for a long distance call. But it's like detective work. That's real comfortable. That's really, well, we're co-writers, so.
Yeah.
Do you record those phone calls, or should have it all there, or do you take notes?
No, I take notes. I should, but as most of you know, I'm technically challenged. That's the kind way of saying, I don't know how to do that. So I just take notes, but I keep my pen. It's funny, I did a book on Margaret Burke White. That was my first book with Abrams in 1999. And I interviewed Eisenstadt, people who passed away who were very key to her life. Her nephew, a lot of key people. And I ultimately, children's books, there's the Drummond collection for some reason, the University of Southern Mississippi. And so they keep, sometimes they pay people to give their papers. In my case, I'm just lucky if they'll accept them
Yeah.
and preserve them. and sometimes they give me a tax write-off. So I remembered exactly what legal pad, because I get calls all the time. And for some reason, they latch on to those books because they were so beautifully produced. We got permission from Life magazine and her family. Some members were still alive, and it's a stunning book. And you have it.
The pictures in this are lovely too,
Thank you
really
very much.
nice.
Well, that's-
Nicely done, yeah.
Thank you so much. I really love the photo research.
Yeah.
So I have a visual memory of exactly what legal pad it might. Because the woman who's the curator, I'll say to her, please, this request came in from BBC. Can you just look through the file? And I can just about, and she'll find
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just something exactly what somebody said.
Yeah.
So,
No, and I hear this from librarians all the time, where they'll say, no, I'm happy to do this because of the way you asked. Oh, Jesus, what did I say? How did I put it? Because they go, oh, you wouldn't believe what I get sometimes. And I just go, no, I ain't putting up with that. But, yeah,
They've been
some,
very good to me, and
some of them
And
are
you know,
wonderful.
you feel that some of these materials, are archival.
Oh,
Phone
absolutely.
conversation I had with Mary Warren's great nephew.
Yeah.
So to me, that's like, well, like, you make all those people. I want to That's it, we'll make other arrangements later.
Taking them to the academy, slowly but surely, they're coming to the academy. Yeah. So that they can be,
Now,
other people.
Frances Marion wrote the first book on how to write film plays. And I had to try through Google.
If you buy it, you didn't buy it, hundreds of dollars.
I would have, if I could, I would have. Because it's the girls' math, I couldn't go shopping.
Yeah, no, you're right, you're right, yeah.
It would have been.
You're right.
But you haven't.
Yeah.
You haven't. So,
My friends have been really good to me. And in fact, when I started this, I didn't even know, I realized on my shelf, I had Lillian Gish's autobiography. I had Mary Pickford's autobiography. I had Anita Luce's books. All had been given to me by friends who all said the version of saw this and thought of you. And I finally went, well, shit, if they think about it, I guess I should think about it, And that's when I started doing my research.
the same thing was your book, which was on my shelf. There used to be a store called Dutton's.
Oh,
Remember
yeah.
that, right? And I bought your book at Dutton's, and it just was such a captivating title. And there it was, when I thought I'll do anything other than clean up during. And there it was. It was
funny.
speaking to me,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
And I took it down, I thought, it's such a catchy title with that
Well,
line
she
down.
gave it to me. Frances said, I spent my life looking for a man I could look up to without first lying down. And my editor did not want me to use the title. She said, only women will appreciate it. Yeah, well. And she said, why did you call it Movies She Wrote?
Oh.
So I said, well, but finally I just said, you're not giving me that much money. Could you at least give me my title? And she did. So anyway,
That's it.
yeah, come on, please. Anyway, all right,
So,
so our time's about up. I think we're about there. So unless anybody has any insightful questions to add to that. It's so good of you guys to come out on a Thursday night and celebrate Susan's new book. So
I
thank you.
feel the same way.
And we have copies of both books up at the counter, and Mike can help check.
You can walk around. Okay, we can walk around.